Hi there, it's me, Teacher Mike from phuketpals. Welcome back to another video. I hope this one helps you out. What we're going to learn today, guys, is how to develop our ideas further for Essay Task 2. That'll be the first part of the lesson. Second part of the lesson, I'm going to show you how to develop ideas and give examples in your body paragraphs. So, what you'll see here on the left are question words why, where, and how. Okay, these are 3 question words, and what we're going to do is use these in direct relation to this Essay Task 2 question here, and then we're going to generate ideas with these question words. Let's have a look at how it's done. Levels of youth crime are increasing rapidly in most cities around the world. What are the reasons for this, and suggest some solutions? Levels of youth crime are increasing rapidly in most cities around the world. What are the reasons for this, and suggest some solutions? So if we take the question word why here, why are levels of youth crime increasing rapidly in most cities around the world? Well, the most obvious ones are that drugs and alcohol, the consumption of these is rising in many places. So, when people are addicted to drugs like heroin, crack cocaine, or whatever, very often they live very antisocial lives kind of outside let's say, the periphery of mainstream culture. Very often they don't have jobs, and as a result, they have to turn to crime. It could be it depends. They could turn to robbery. They could turn to selling drugs themselves to fund their habit, many things. Same with not so much with alcohol, but alcohol can definitely lead to crime issues too. Poverty is the second one I would focus on here. Poverty also contributes massively to youth crime. Kids who are born into poverty are much more likely to engage in crime than those who are not. There are many reasons for this, too many for this video, but poverty is a causal factor for sure. Some other ideas that could work here, maybe disillusionment with politics might lead to youth crime. So disillusionment means that people or kids don't feel part of the system. They don't feel part of the political system. They feel that it's not working for them. They feel that they don't have a voice. They can't change anything, that the future doesn't exist for them. And as a result of that, they may think that there's no point in behaving well or obeying the law, and they might turn to crime. So if you're disillusioned with something, you think that something doesn't work, it's impossible for it to work, and you give up on it. Okay, so this might contribute to youth crime as well. Also, feelings of detachment caused by social media. We live in a social media saturated culture these days. Many people feel that they don't feel part of a kind of societal group. They feel that they're isolated on their Facebook page or in their Instagram feed. They're kind of interacting less with friends, interacting less with family. And as a result, this causes them to take a step back from normal social relations. This can create feelings of worthlessness. They may feel that life is pointless. They may, even have feelings that they can't go on. And again, this could lead to crime. People who feel they've got nothing to lose very often get involved in crime. So they're the why parts here. Where are these things happening? Well, I just picked two cities that I know, London and Bangkok. You could talk about London. There's definitely a disillusionment with politics at the moment with the Brexit situation. A lot of young people are very negative about the future. Bangkok, I mentioned this because there's a lot of drug and alcohol abuse in Bangkok. So how can we get some solutions for this issue? How can we get some solutions? Well, first thing, government spending on youth training. So the government can allocate or put some taxpayers' dollars into youth training programs. I remember years ago, when I was in Brighton in the UK, there was a wonderfully funded recycling project for homeless people in the city. What it was, if you were homeless, you could go and sign up at this recycling project. There they would train you how to make tables, how to make cabinets, how to make chairs out of recycled wood. And you didn't have to pay anything. This meant that homeless people got off the street, their lives once again had a purpose, and they gained some much needed skills, which then they could take forward with them and get a job, which again gets them off the streets. And this decreases crime in many cases. More negatively, the government could make laws more severe for offenders. So, some people would argue that more stringent or strict laws act as a deterrent, or something that prevents people from committing the crime in the first place. That could decrease crime, some people might say. Also, there could be an increased dialogue with community groups. So government representatives or local political representatives could start communicating more with community groups, youth groups, and finding out from the young people what their problems really are. And if they listen to the young people, then they might be able to offer some solutions to these issues. And if they offered solutions effectively and efficiently, then youth crime, there's a good chance that it might drop. Okay, so that's how the why, where, and how technique can work with an essay question. And you can practice with this at home with any IELTS essay 2 question. Try why, where, how, and see where it gets you. You can generate many ideas from this. Another example. Here's the question again. Even though globalization affects the world's economics in a very positive way, its negative sides should not be forgotten. Discuss. Even though globalization affects the world's economics in a very positive way, its negative side should not be forgotten. Discuss. So we get a straightforward discussion question here. So why? Why does globalization affect the world's economies in a very positive way and a very negative way? Positively, globalization creates a free flow of people, meaning people can move pretty freely around the world these days, depending on your passport, of course, but you can always get visas. But if you're in the EU, for example, you can move around quite freely. And the world is, generally speaking, because of globalization, it's much easier to get around the world these days. It feels like a smaller place. There's also the free movement of money. So it's much easier nowadays, because of globalization, to transfer money around the world across international borders and stuff like that. Also, free movement of resources. Okay, so resources are moving more freely around the world as well. As a result, this is helping economies grow around the world, and this in turn creates jobs and capital and money. Okay, so that's the positive effect of globalization on the world's economics. Of course, there are also negatives. The glaring one, the elephant in the room, in fact, is that the gap between rich and poor is widening under the process of globalization. If you look at America or the UK, the top 1% own the vast majority of the wealth in the country. So you have to ask yourself the question, is this right? Is this fair? Is this the way we want the world to be? And it's globalization that has exacerbated or made this situation worse. So that's a negative. Where are these things happening? Well, they're happening all over the world. But for the sake of this essay, I just picked a few developed world capital cities: London, Tokyo, New York. You could mention a few of those in your essay and talk about whatever city you know and has been affected by globalization. And when did all this happen? Arguably, it all started with Christopher Columbus. You could mention the year. You could mention a sentence in Columbus's trip, maybe in your introduction. It could be. You can also then talk about how the internet age that we find ourselves in, has accelerated globalization. It has pushed an accelerator pad or a button. It's kind of sped everything up. We now live in a kind of hyper-speed world in which people, money, and resources are just zipping around. They're flying around like a pinball in a pinball machine. And yeah, this is again making the process. The negatives and the positives are kind of, growing as a result of this. So that's about it. Again, that's how you use why, where, and when technique. This is again a pre-writing technique. You would use this before you actually before you write your real essay. It's good just to know a number of techniques for developing ideas in the pre-writing stage, because one technique works for one person and it doesn't work for the next. So you have to find what works for you. So just practice all the techniques I've taught in this course and let me know which one works for you. And I'm sure one of them will. So we'll move on. This is all about kind of giving examples to develop your ideas in your body paragraphs. Okay, so if you want to get a band 9 for your essay for task achievement, okay, then remember task achievement is 25% in the band descriptors. So 25% of your score for task 2 will be task achievement. What you have to do is present a fully developed position in answer to the question with relevant, fully extended and well supported ideas. Okay, so you have to develop your position and you have to give examples, or you have to use relevant, fully extended and supported ideas. Those ideas can be most generally our examples in there. And if you want to present your examples, this is what you do over here. Here's some different ways to do that. For example, this can be seen or this can be observed, or for example, comma, for instance, comma, to illustrate or such as. And just be careful, don't use such as at the beginning of a sentence because it sounds a bit strange. Use such as in the middle of your sentences, okay? Keep the rest of these for the start of the sentence, okay? 1, 2, 3, and 4. These can be used at the start of sentences. Such as you can use in the middle of a sentence. And some students use like instead of such as. Just be careful with that because like is a little bit informal and this is a formal, it's a formal essay. You have to use formal language. Such as is much more formal than like, okay? Here's 2 examples just to show you how these work. Again, a rising number of teenagers today are addicted to social media. Let's develop that idea. For example, platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat use psychological stimuli to keep teens reaching for their devices every few minutes. These platforms pump up our egos, pull on our retrospective heartstrings, make us feel part of a larger community of friends, and fulfill our basic need for human interaction. To illustrate this, a study into Facebook addiction found that blah, blah, blah. Okay, so let's look at it in a bit more detail. We have our topic sentence here at the top, of which we want to develop. So we give a nice for example, and we give some real life examples. I encourage you all to use real world examples that most people know. Keep it simple, yeah? Use things like Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Apple. These things that are easy to talk about. They're recognizable and they get you points, and it's much easier to write about than something obscure or unusual. So we have the real world examples here, and we're saying that these platforms are using psychological stimuli to keep teens reaching for their device. So they're using psychological things that stimulate us in our mind, things that our mind finds very, very interesting or our mind relates to very freely and easily. And that's exactly what these platforms are doing. They've used when they're researching these things continually, they will use psychologists to tell them, they will say, what will keep people on this platform? What will keep them on Facebook for 1 hour, 2 hours? How can we increase that? Because remember, they're getting paid for advertising revenue. The longer they keep you on there, the more they can charge for advertising. So although you're getting it for free, there is a price to be paid ultimately. There's no such thing as a free lunch, as they say. So what are these psychological stimuli that Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat are using to keep us addicted, or keep teenagers addicted? Sorry. They're doing things like pumping up our egos, pulling on our heartstrings, our retrospective heartstrings. Retrospective just means as you look back at the past. If you pull on someone's heartstring, you're making them emotional. So that's what Facebook does. It shows you pictures of like 5 years ago, 10 years on Facebook, and it shows you a picture of someone from that. And you think, oh, look at me then, that was great. Or maybe you see pictures of your friends from years ago and it makes your heart flutter and you think back to the past and how great things were. Humans like this kind of stuff, okay? Facebook know that. They also make you feel part of a larger community of friends. That's what social media does. Remember, we have evolved as a species, Homo sapiens, to live in groups, and we need to feel part of a group. Even when we go back and we lived in groups of 120 or 125 people, we needed to feel part of something. We needed to have connections between the people in the group. People still need that today. And Facebook provides that with kind of instantaneously. Also, we need basic human interaction. Okay, and also these social media platforms here provide that with, just as I say, very, very quickly. Then we have in red here to illustrate this. So to illustrate all this stuff, a study into Facebook addiction found that, and then you will go on and explain about this study and how it affects everything. Okay, so you can see we're developing ideas nicely here in this particular body extract from a body paragraph. The second and last example today is that bullying has become an ever more serious issue in modern times. Okay, take cyberbullying, for example. Okay, so we're starting to develop this phenomena or this thing, usually facilitated or made happen via social media platforms, is causing an epidemic, a massive problem, and mental health problems for countless young people globally. Give an example again. For instance, statistics show kids in India experience the most frequent and severe cyberbullying in the world. This can lead to antisocial behavior such as self-harm and suicide. So in this paragraph, we've developed it to the max. Okay, we have examples, another example, and we give an example here as well. Okay, so that's about it for this video. I hope it helped you, and yeah, we'll see you back for the next one. Thank you.